with laughter and chatter, the air thick with the scent of expensive champagne and aged cigars. Everyone was celebrating, everyone except me. I had arrived uninvited, knowing full well what awaited me. I stepped inside, my dress simple but elegant, my chin lifted in defiance. The moment my father, Charles Lancaster, saw me, his face contorted with disgust. His voice rang out across the room. "What the hell are you doing here?" The chatter died instantly. All eyes turned to me. My mother, Eleanor, turned from her group of socialites, her expression cold. My brother, Ryan, leaned against the bar, swirling his drink with amusement. I swallowed, keeping my voice steady. I came to celebrate with my family. Laughter. Actual laughter. Ryan shook his head. "Oh, that's rich." My father took a step forward. "You're not family, Evelyn." A hush fell over the crowd. My stomach twisted, but I refused to flinch. "Excuse me?" His voice was ice. "You have no place in this family." My heart pounded, my breath caught in my throat. "Dad, you don't mean that." My mother's lips curled. "We absolutely do. You chose a life of mediocrity." My father spat. "You walked away from everything we built, and now you have the audacity to return?" I clenched my fists. "I didn't walk away. You pushed me out." Ryan smirked, raising his glass. "Well, now we're making it official." He turned to the crowd, eyes gleaming. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's toast to the Lancaster family. And to Evelyn, our former daughter, who is now nothing but a stranger to us." Glasses clinked. Applause rippled. My humiliation was complete. My father leaned in, his voice low and final. "You are dead to us." I inhaled sharply, my chest burning. I had two choices, beg or walk away with dignity. I chose the latter, but I swore to myself one day they would regret this. I left that night with nothing but my pride. No money, no home, no family. For months, I lived in my car. I took odd jobs, waitressing, cleaning, even sleeping on park benches when I couldn't afford rent. The pain of betrayal fueled me. The nights were long, the hunger unbearable. But I refused to break. And then, one night, everything changed. I found an opportunity, a struggling startup looking for someone willing to work hard for peanuts. I had nothing to lose, so I threw myself into the job. Days turned into months. I learned everything: marketing, negotiations, strategy. I climbed the ranks, worked harder than anyone else. And then the break came. A deal. A game changer. In 3 years, I built a company worth $10 million. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Now it was time for my return. The Lancaster estate glittered under the night sky, the annual family gala in full swing. The same event where they had erased me from their lives. I stepped out of my black luxury car, my custom gown flowing like liquid gold. Whispers followed as I strode into the hall. My father turned. His expression shifted from confusion to horror. Ryan choked on his drink. "No way." My mother's hand trembled around her champagne glass. "Evelyn." I walked up to them, pausing just before the grand banquet table. With slow precision, I placed a velvet box on the table. The room watched in eerie silence as I flipped it open. Inside was a $10 million check. Gasps. Shocked murmurs. "A gift," I said, my voice calm. "From your dead daughter." The entire room froze. My father's face turned red. His fingers twitched at his sides. "You're lying." Ryan's smirk faltered. "This is fake. There's no way you—" "I built an empire." I cut him off. "Without your name. Without your money." Ryan's jaw clenched. "You expect us to believe that?" I smiled, reaching into my clutch. I pulled out an official Forbes magazine, my face on the cover. Their expressions twisted in disbelief. "You underestimated me," I whispered. Silence stretched between us. Then my mother spoke. "Evelyn," her voice was shaky. "We didn't mean to." I scoffed. "Don't." Her eyes glistened. "Please, just listen. We were wrong." I folded my arms. Now that I have money, I suddenly matter? Ryan's face darkened. You think you're better than us now? I exhaled. No, Ryan. I've always been better than you. The weight of my father's stare pressed against me like an iron cage, but I stood firm. The last time I had been in this room, I had been nothing. Now, I was something they couldn't ignore. You're lying, my father said again, but this time, his voice lacked conviction. I tilted my head slightly, my lips curving into a slow, knowing smile. You're afraid, aren't you? I asked softly. Afraid that I succeeded without you. Afraid that you don't control me anymore. His nostrils flared. Don't flatter yourself. You're still the same naive girl who thought she could make it alone. I chuckled. And yet, I'm standing here, holding your company's future in my hands. A flicker of unease crossed his face, but he quickly masked it with his usual arrogance. Ryan, however, wasn't as controlled. He slammed his glass down onto the table, liquid sloshing over the edge. This is bullshit. You walk in here, acting like you own the place, flashing money around like it means something. But we know what you are, Evelyn. You're still nothing. The room fell silent. I exhaled slowly, then turned to him. Really? Let's test that theory. I reached into my clutch and pulled out another document, this one far more important than the check. The deed to their company. I held it up for the room to see. Because as of last week, Ryan, I do own the place. The reaction was instantaneous. My father's face turned ghostly white. My mother gasped. Ryan took a step forward, grabbing for the document, but I pulled it back just in time. What the hell is this? My father barked, his voice shaking. I met his eyes, unblinking. It's your worst nightmare, Dad. A cold hush settled over the banquet hall. Some of the guests were whispering, their eyes wide with shock. I placed the document on the table beside the $10 million check and tapped it. This, I said calmly, is proof that I now own 51% of Lancaster Enterprises. Your investors were happy to sell their shares when I offered them twice what they were worth. My father staggered backward, gripping the chair for support. His pride, the empire he built, was now mine. No, this isn't possible, my father muttered, flipping through the document with shaking hands. Ryan looked like he was about to explode. You stole our company, he snarled. I raised a brow. Stole? No, I bought it. Legally. His face twisted with rage. You conniving little. Watch it, I warned, my voice dangerously low. He stopped, fists clenched at his sides. My father lifted his head, his eyes burning with fury. Why? His voice cracked. Why would you do this to your own family? I leaned in slightly. I learned from the best. For the first time in his life, he had no response. Tears welled up in my mother's eyes. She reached for my arm, but I pulled away. Evelyn, please, she whispered. The pain in her voice should have moved me. But after years of being discarded, my heart had grown steel-plated. You didn't care when I was sleeping in my car, I said, my voice sharp as a blade. You didn't care when I was struggling to eat. My mother choked on a sob. I held up a hand, stopping her. You don't get to cry now. She flinched. Ryan, still trying to recover from his shock, let out a forced laugh. Okay, fine. You got your revenge, Eve. You proved your point. Now what? I smiled. Now, I decide what happens to all of you. The room felt suffocating. My father, once the unshakable Charles Lancaster, looked like a broken man. I tapped my nails against the $10 million check. I came here with a simple offer, I said. Take this money and walk away. Retire. Leave the business behind. My father stiffened. And if I don't? I shrugged. Then you'll watch me dismantle everything you built, piece by piece. My mother inhaled sharply. You wouldn't. I met her desperate gaze. Wouldn't I? Ryan scoffed. She's bluffing. I turned to him, my expression cold. Want to bet your job on that? The color drained from his face. My mother suddenly dropped to her knees. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Please, she begged. Don't do this. We were wrong. We hurt you. But we're still your family. The sight of her, once proud and untouchable, now reduced to this, made something in my chest tighten. I inhaled deeply. Family? My voice shook slightly. You threw me out like I was nothing. Tears streaked down her cheeks. I was afraid. I stared at her. Of what? Her lips trembled. Of losing my place in this family. Your father. She looked at him, her voice breaking. He made me choose. Something inside me cracked. So that was it. She had been weak. She had chosen to betray me because of him. And now, she was choosing to beg. I exhaled, my mind spinning. My revenge was complete. But suddenly, I didn't feel victorious. I had dreamed of this moment, seeing them crumble. But standing here, watching my mother break, I realized something. I didn't need to destroy them. They had already destroyed themselves. A thick, oppressive silence settled over the room. The weight of my mother's confession still lingered in the air, its echoes bouncing off the marble floors and polished walls. My father sat stone-faced, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the armrests of his chair. Ryan stood off to the side, fuming, his lips pressed into a thin, furious line. And me? I was the only one in control. I took a slow, measured breath and straightened my shoulders, surveying the scene before me. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment where I didn't just reclaim my dignity, but where I made it abundantly clear that I would never be under their control again. I took my time walking around the table, letting my heels click against the pristine marble floors. Every step was deliberate, every move designed to remind them of the power shift that had taken place. I was no longer the desperate girl they had cast aside. I was the one who held all the cards now. Finally, I stopped in front of my father, looking him straight in the eye. You asked me why I did this. I said, my voice smooth but firm. Why I bought your company. Why I came back. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. I leaned in just slightly. It wasn't for revenge. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. No. Ryan spat. Then what the hell is this? A sick power trip? I turned to him, my lips twitching in amusement. Oh, Ryan, you really haven't learned anything, have you? His hands balled into fists at his sides, but he said nothing. I exhaled softly, then turned back to my father. This wasn't about vengeance. If I wanted revenge, I wouldn't have bought the company. I would have destroyed it. I would have let it rot from the inside out, let your reputation crumble alongside it. I would have let you watch as everything you built turned to dust. The realization settled on his face like a slow, dawning horror. But I didn't, I continued. Because I didn't do this to ruin you. I did this to prove you wrong. To show you that I didn't need the Lancaster name to succeed. To show you that I am more than just your discarded daughter. Ryan scoffed. And now what? You want us to beg for forgiveness? You think you're better than us. I turned to him with a smirk. Oh, Ryan. I don't think I'm better than you. I know I am. His face darkened. You little. Enough, my father snapped. Ryan fell silent, his jaw working furiously. I folded my arms. Here's how this is going to work. The room tensed. I now own 51% of Lancaster Enterprises. That means that every decision, every major call, goes through me. You? I glanced at my father. You'll remain as chairman emeritus, a symbolic role, nothing more. His face twisted in fury. You can't. I held up a hand, silencing him. I can, and I have. I turned to Ryan. And you? You're out. Ryan's head snapped up, eyes wild. What? You heard me. I'm removing you from your executive position. Effective immediately. The blood drained from his face. You can't do that. I tilted my head. Oh, but I can. You see, Ryan, I did my homework. Your position wasn't protected by any long-term contract. The moment I became majority shareholder, you became expendable. Ryan lunged forward, slamming his hands on the table. I built this company. I let out a soft, amused laugh. No, Ryan. You inherited this company. You've never built anything in your life. His face burned red with fury, but before he could launch into another tirade, my father spoke. You want to take everything from me, he said, his voice low and trembling with barely contained rage. I met his gaze head-on.
No, Dad.
You took everything from me. I'm just taking back what was mine all along. A heavy silence settled between us. My father inhaled sharply, his hands tightening into fists. What do you want? Finally, I walked around the table, my fingers tracing along the edge of the velvet box that still held the untouched $10 million check. I want 3 things, I said smoothly. First, you will publicly acknowledge what you did to me. I want a formal statement, a press release, where you admit that you disowned me, that you shamed me, and that you were wrong. Ryan snorted. Yeah, right. Like he'd ever. My father raised a hand, silencing him. His eyes were locked onto mine, his expression unreadable. And the second, I smiled. You will step back from all decision-making at Lancaster Enterprises. You'll keep your title, but you will have no power. You will sit on the board, but you will never again have control over this company. His lips pressed into a thin line. And the third, I looked at my mother. She stays. My father's brow furrowed. I won't cut her out, I clarified. But only if she truly wants to rebuild our relationship. If she tries to manipulate me, if she takes your side over mine again, then she's out. Forever. My mother let out a shaky breath. I want that. I do. I searched her face for any sign of deception, but all I saw was a woman who had finally realized what she had lost. I nodded. Then you'll have one chance. Don't waste it. A long, tense silence followed. Then, finally, my father exhaled, his shoulders slumping. Fine, he muttered. Ryan gaped at him. Dad, are you serious? My father shot him a glare. Be quiet, Ryan. Ryan took a step back, his hands trembling with rage. You're just going to let her win? My father turned back to me, his expression grim. She already has. For the first time in my life, I saw it. Defeat. Not just anger. Not just disappointment. Pure, unfiltered defeat. I had done what I set out to do. I had won. But strangely enough, I didn't feel the satisfaction I expected. I only felt free. I inhaled deeply, stepping back from the table. The documents will be finalized tomorrow, I said. Enjoy your retirement. Then, without another word, I turned, walking toward the exit. I didn't need to look back, because I already knew they would never look at me the same way again. I walked out of the Lancaster estate, my heels clicking on the polished marble floors, my chest rising and falling with slow, steady breaths. The moment I stepped into the cool night air, I felt something shift inside me, like a weight I had carried for years had finally lifted. I had won, but the victory didn't feel as sweet as I once imagined. I had spent years dreaming of this moment, seeing my father's face as he realized he no longer controlled me, watching Ryan crumble under the weight of his arrogance, witnessing my mother beg for a relationship she once discarded like trash. Yet now, as I stood under the vast, open sky, I realized something. I didn't need their approval. I never did. The Lancaster name, their wealth, their power, it had always been a prison disguised as a legacy. And tonight, I had finally walked free. The next morning, the headlines were everywhere. Lancaster Enterprises faces major power shift. A strange daughter returns as majority owner. Evelyn Lancaster, the billionaire heiress who didn't need an inheritance. Charles Lancaster steps down after shocking family confession. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Emails flooded in. Business partners, former acquaintances, even people who once ridiculed me now wanted a piece of my success. But I ignored them all. Instead, I focused on what mattered, running my company, proving that my rise wasn't a fluke. And just as I had demanded, my father released a public statement. In a press conference, he sat stiffly at a long mahogany table, cameras flashing in his face as he read the words I had carefully crafted. Years ago, I made a mistake. I turned my back on my daughter, Evelyn Lancaster, believing she was unworthy of the family name. I was wrong. She has proven herself beyond what any of us could have imagined, and I acknowledge that she is the true leader of Lancaster Enterprises now." The words nearly choked him, but he said them. And the world saw it. That was enough. Ryan didn't take the loss well. Furious over his removal from the company, he tried everything to challenge my decision. Lawsuits, smear campaigns, desperate attempts to gain public sympathy. It all failed. His name became synonymous with entitlement and incompetence. With no access to the company's wealth, Ryan found himself spiraling. I heard rumors that he was drowning in debt, trying to maintain a lavish lifestyle he could no longer afford. I could have helped him, but I didn't. Not out of spite, but because he needed to learn the hard way that power wasn't something handed to you. It was something earned. My mother didn't vanish after that night. Unlike my father and brother, she didn't lash out, didn't try to retaliate. Instead, she did something I never expected.
She tried.
She reached out, asking to meet for coffee. She showed up, time and time again, without expectation, just wanting to talk. At first, I was cold,
Guarded.
but she didn't push. She simply listened. And for the first time in my life, I saw her not as my mother, but as a flawed, broken woman who had made mistakes she was finally ready to face. Forgiveness didn't happen overnight, but eventually I let her in, not because she deserved it, but because I did. 1 year later, I visited the Lancaster estate for the last time. The house was just as grand as ever, but it no longer felt like home. I found my father in his study, staring out the window, his once powerful frame now smaller, older. He turned when he heard me, his eyes shadowed. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice tired. I stepped forward, meeting his gaze one last time. "I wanted to see you," I said, "before I leave for good." Something flickered in his expression. Regret? Sadness? I wasn't sure. "Where are you going?" he asked. I smiled softly. "Anywhere but here." For the first time in my life, he didn't have anything to say. I nodded once, then turned and walked away. And I never looked back. In the years that followed, I built something even greater than Lancaster Enterprises. I created a legacy of my own. A company that wasn't built on family names or privilege, but on resilience and hard work. I invested in people like me, people who had been written off, underestimated, abandoned. I found true family in the people who stood by me, not because they had to, but because they chose to. And in the end, that was worth more than any last name. One day, I received a letter. From my father. It was short, simple. "I was wrong, and I am proud of you." I folded the letter and placed it in my drawer. I didn't need his validation anymore. But knowing he finally saw me for who I was, that was enough. And with that, I moved forward. Not as Evelyn Lancaster, the disowned daughter, but as Evelyn,